professor, physician, epidemiologist. I am Dr. Sri Banerjee. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Sri Banerjee, core faculty for the College of Health Sciences at Walden University. I'm proud to be presenting this recently peer-reviewed published article about the determinants of access to low-cost ultrasound services among pregnant women in rural areas of Kefi, Nigeria. This is a global health topic, as you can see, and this publication I worked with along with actually one of my former graduates from the University of Roehampton, Dr. Idris Yakubu. And also a special thanks to my other collaborator, Dr. Nwi-Ue, who is also a recent graduate of mine and at the doctoral level from Walden University. So first of all, great appreciation for that. And then I wanted to also start off by saying that a lot of the various findings, and this is from, of course, years of research, some of the original uh, uh, research collection IRB process, of course, was difficult. But from the very beginning, also once the findings were completed, we had a lot of issues trying to find a suitable outlet where we could concisely present a lot of these findings. And so here we found a way to present this in a manner that people can understand. And so this is in the form of a letter to an editor. Very concise. And the way the description is, if you take a look through some of these, it's actually pretty concise. But before we started with the research, we actually had to do a preliminary research and understanding of the subject area from the World Health Organization. And so we had to further best understand what was behind something called Sustainable Development Goals. And so these, of course, were initially, they were considered millennium development goals. So what happened was, if we track maternal mortality rate, this was especially when you're talking about ultrasounds and antenatal care, we're trying to prevent at the end maternal mortality rate. So, if we look at some of the trends there, between the years 1990 and 2015, the global maternal mortality rate actually decreased, right? So this went down by 44%. So, despite this progress, though, in the Millennium Development Goals, the world was a bit more ambitious, and so the target was 75% reduction. And so, of course, this was very important to have not only goals, but proper goals that actually bring improved health to the nation. And so it was collectively decided that this was going to be the rate of reduction. Well, still when these were revisited, still a large number of inequities persisted. And for instance, Sub-Saharan Africa maternal mortality rate is way higher, than what is at the global scale. So even though it may be 216 per 100,000 globally, geographic considerations taken into account, Sub-Saharan Africa, the maternal mortality rate is 546 per 100,000 live births. So it's much higher in Sub-Saharan Africa, and so maternal mortality reduction remains a priority under this is specific goal number 3. And what does goal number 3 say? Well, it says ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all ages. And so in the new Sustainable Development Goals, this was what carried over, and this is needing to be achieved by 2030. And so the World Health Organization, of course, further published in February 2015 something important, which is known as the Strategies Toward Ending Preventable Maternal Mortality, EPMM strategies. You might hear this acronym a lot more in the context of maternal mortality when we're thinking about sustainable development goals. But this was all determined as a conglomeration and a confluence of multiple consultations between stakeholders around the globe. And so the targets and the strategies in the EPMM report are grounded in a basic human rights approach to maternal and newborn health and focus on eliminating inequities that lead to disparities in access. So specifically, why was this research so important is because in Nigeria in 2015, if you looked at maternal mortality rates, these are actually way higher than even the Sub-Saharan African rates of 546. This was seen at 800 per 100,000 live births. So this was way higher than anywhere else, which means that we really needed to look at where some of these problem areas lie in order to help this problem. So access became an issue to low-cost ultrasound technology. One good thing about ultrasound technology, it's highly portable. It's something that is remotely very much becoming in vogue and really can relieve some of these access-related burdens that are so typical in these areas. And so diagnostic imaging is unfortunately currently limited to many urban settings, so a lot of people in the rural areas are having to travel a lot longer, which would additionally be another barrier from which they would not want to maybe travel longer distances or wanting not to maybe burden the rest of the family. Because if you take a look at some of these findings now, you'll see that a lot of places, and let me scroll down to this, but in a lot of our population group, a lot of these individuals are younger, from the 18 to 27. But not only that, they have had they're gravida 4, so they have been pregnant 3 previous times, and then also a lot of their household income is quite low. So this makes a lot of the burdens and the barriers from resources a lot heavier among individuals, communities, and women that are going through pregnancy with such dire income. So what is needed here is to understand this problem much better in the context of communities in rural Nigeria and other low and middle income countries. So again, the if you look at some of these other measures, and take a look. So literacy rate was actually higher here, but in terms of employment, some were employed, others were housewives, and then there were some other professions. And then finally, just taking a look at some of the important findings, what we found was the central theme was, why were people attending low-cost ultrasound services so that we could better promote some of these services. So the central theme was that most of these individuals were in households that were living in extreme poverty. In fact, 78% of them were. So understanding how these become more complicated in the context of poverty becomes challenging. So in terms of even satisfaction of services, how much daily household income was being received, this made a difference. So people that may have more resources, they wouldn't have to go through all the effort to try to gather more. And so this relieves some of that burden in terms of trying to stress about where they will get their next resource. So these are all considerations to be thinking about when conducting a global health study, and what the implications are. So as we found also that women that were older and pregnant actually were more likely to travel long distances, and unfortunately in our study population, the individuals were younger, and so this would prevent them from traveling to an urban ultrasound center. So, again, all of these findings within this study emphasizes one important fact is that ultrasound services and access to care needs to be much more broadly distributed throughout all areas, including rural areas, not only in low and middle income communities, but in all communities all around the world. Thank you for listening.